Hello, and welcome back to this course of videos on MongoDB NoSQL database. Now in this video we'll be looking at the key differences between the relational database model and the NoSQL database model. Now the first key thing to know about the relational database model is it's very structured at the outset. You need to decide what tables you want to have in your database, and within each table, what fields you want to have in your table, and within each field, what kind of data you are going to hold in that field. And you need to decide this at the outset before you start populating data. That's the key thing. So what I'm talking about here, tables and fields and data types, that is known as a schema for a relational database. And you need to decide and fix your schema at the outset before you start populating data. Now, the second thing about relational databases, which is key, is the fact that they aim for normalization. Now, the way normalization works is, let's take an example of, let's say I am selling books in a bookstore, and I want to create a database for my customers, to store my customers. Now, I have my customers table here. They have an ID, a name, and an email address. But I also want to get their favorite number. Let's say for some random example, I want their favorite number. Now, but what if my customers have more than one favorite number? So let's take ID number 1, Marcy. I have her email. If she has more than one favorite number, if I just added favorite number as an extra field here, and Marcy has more than one favorite number, I'm going to have to copy this entire row, make a copy, so make a second row, just so I can get her two favorite numbers. Now that's going to create duplication of both her name and her email address. Now, this is the problem not just in the fact that it's taking up extra storage space, but also the fact that duplication of data can be a problem. If Marcy then requests me to update her email address, as it stands now, it's only in one place, so I can update it quite safely. If, let's say, for example, Marcy had 10 different favorite numbers, she would have 10 different records in this customer table, so this email address would be repeated 10 times. Now, what if I go to update her email address for her, then what if 2 of them update, but the other 8 fail for some reason if the database goes down? Now, you then have inconsistency of data, and this is what relational databases try to avoid. They try to avoid things called data redundancy, which is data duplication, mostly because they want to make sure that updates are atomic. Basically, updates only happen in one place. They don't have to update in multiple different places. And that's the idea of normalization. So what it would do, in terms of this example with the favorite number, we would create a completely separate table for favorite numbers. This favorite numbers table would have ID and favorite number. So the ID would match the ID from the customers table. Marcy's ID is number 1, and you can see here, and then we have favorite number. So you can see here, Marcy with the ID of 1 has her 2 favorite numbers recorded, but we're still able to keep this here as a unique record here, which would be called a primary key. This would be the primary key. The ID would be the primary key. But we could make it a primary key because there is only one unique record for Marcy in the entire customers table. Now, and then the way we would link these 2 tables together, we would link, it's also called a join. So we would link the ID field, which would be known as the primary key, on the main table, and it would link down to ID in the favorite numbers table. This would be referred to as a foreign key. So the same thing, let's say I wanted to record my customers' ratings for different books. This example would be even more complicated to add to here. If I added book name and rating, I would end up with many duplicates of name and email in this table by trying to include book and rating into my main customers table. So again, I'm going to break it out and normalize the data into this table. And so you see here Marcy with her ID of 1 there. She's rated 2 books, book 1 and book 2, and given a rating of 8 and 6. And again, I'm keeping my unique record for Marcy here. So this ID of 1 can be the primary key for this table. So that's the way that relational databases structure and store their data. Now, on the NoSQL side, it's a very different kind of structure that they're using. So, first of all, we mentioned that with relational or SQL databases, all of the schema has to be finalized up front before we start populating data. That is not the case with NoSQL at all. It's much more flexible and dynamic, and it's called schema-less. So you can guess what it is. It's not strictly true because you can replicate schema within NoSQL databases, but it's known as schema-less. Now, the key difference between these two models here, this data here is replicating the data that we have across these 3 tables. With NoSQL, the equivalent of a table is called a collection, and the equivalent of a row is called a document. So if you note this here, where I've replicated, I have my ID of 1. So this is Marcy's document. This is the row for Marcy. This here, right down to this ending blue bracket here, is the document for Marcy, which is the equivalent of a row. So rows for relational databases, documents for NoSQL. Now, the equivalent of a table in a NoSQL database is called a collection. Now, this would be a collection. You can see here, I've got my second document, which is James. My second customer is James. This is my second document within my collection. Collection for relational database is table. But you can see that the key thing is here. I have 3 tables here because to capture my customers, their favorite numbers, and their book ratings. In this collection that I have here with these, I only have 2 documents in there, but I've incorporated all of the data from these 3 tables into one single collection. I don't need these separate tables and these separate links. I've incorporated it all into one. And there are great benefits to doing that, which we'll talk about in a later video. For example, being able to scale horizontally. So the way we've managed to do that, let's walk through this example. So here we have this row, this first row in the customers table. ID is 1, name is Marcy, email is marcy@x.com. So within my first document here, document beginning and ending there, I have ID of 1, name of Marcy, email of marcy.com. So within my document, I've replicated the first row of this first table. But if you look now, within the same document, I've got my favorite numbers here in the same document. Now this, again, we're still using the key value pair analogy here, but the value isn't just individual value. This is called an array here, and an array can hold multiple values. So these multiple values in here, I have 2. Marcy's ID of 1 has a favorite number of 11 and a favorite number of 22. I've captured that in one single value from this key value pair, 11 and 22. So it's what's called, I've embedded these 2 numbers within the value of the key value store in this document. Same if I move down to ratings. You can see Marcy here for ratings. We have 2 entries in the ratings table, book 1 and book 2, rating of 8 and 6. So here is my key from my key value pair within my document is ratings. Now the value of my key value pair is actually an array. This is the array end and this is the array beginning. This array makes up the value of my key value pair. Now within this array I have actually embedded 2 sub-objects here, 2 sub-objects. Now, and within these sub-objects, I have the book is book 1 and rating of 8, book 2 and rating of 6. So I'm capturing this data here by embedding 2 objects within a larger object, which is a value of a key value pair within my documents. I hope that makes sense. Now you can see here, this is, so now I've covered the 3 fields from the customer table. I've captured the favorite numbers, the 2 favorite numbers from the numbers table, and I've captured the 2 ratings from the ratings table using an embedded object. So now I'm going to close my object here. Sorry, I'm going to close my document because that's all of Marcy's information completed. And then I'm going to move on to my next document, which is representing James. So again, I'm going through the same process. The ID of 2, name of James, email of James, james@y.com. So that's capturing this row here. Again, as I mentioned before, a row in a relational database is a document in a NoSQL database. And then favorite numbers. So James has only 1 entry in the favorite numbers table, 51. So ID of 2 is 51. And here we go. I have my favorite numbers key, and the value is this array. This array this time only has 1 number in 51. And then I would do the same thing with ratings. And so you see each entry, each document is actually capturing the data from all of these 3 tables in this relational database. So that is a key difference between the relational model and the NoSQL model. Instead of using links, or joins they're called, we're actually using embedded objects to get this same effect. And so we'll talk about this more in the next video.